So, welcome back. Is Stephen Douglas, cultural archaeologist, including trolls, about battling distant folklore archetypes. Please welcome him on the stage.
Great. It's very appropriate to be here speaking about our distant folklore universe here at the Pirate Party Security Conference. Those who founded the Pirate Party get what I'm about to speak to you about. There's a flow between, on the one hand, culture, art, films, literature about pirates and geopolitical security. Those whom we trust are within our conditions of civilized life don't seem to understand them. This is partly such easy marks for Russian and MAGA wrapped up so easily inside Russian or MAGA trolls, like flies in a spider's web. Very hard for them to their side old thing. Today, I'm going to offer a perspective on what I call our folklore universe. And I'm also going to offer a means to escape the troll. Memes wrap us up inside when we fall for MAGA, Make America Great Again, MAGA or Russian folklore. None of this is easy. Don't get me wrong, I don't have all the answers. Whenever you hear anyone talk about disinformation or disinfolklore as if it happens to other people, as if only stupid people fall for trolls, whenever you hear chatter like that, be certain that those people speaking like that, and I've spoken like that myself, are easy marks for trolls, for MAGA and Russian disinfolklore. So today I declare we live in a true disinfolklore universe, the fabric of every day of our lives, work, personal relationships, life choices, fates, is fused with aspects of Druidy Dawn and Duncy Putin's mimetic onslaught. Our moods, our motivations, our intentions, our attitudes are being formed by what I call disinfolklore. Through whichever media memes we consume, or indirectly through our own minds, trolling our own minds, and those of others influencing us from archetypes created and evolving from. That are now running America. The totality of our info is occupied by memes, like the brand Department of Government Efficiency, ground, and a baseless meme coin. The totality of our conception of America now is occupied by actors, leaders in costumes. It's very easy to find pictures of Elmo superhero costumes. He's obsessed with it, and he's obsessed with posting them. He is looking in the mirror. Elmo Robin and Druidy Dawn Batman dressed up in dramatic universe costumes through AI and in real life influence the decisions of hundreds of millions of people. A distant folklore universe using dramatic universe inspired is the means of creating a distant folklore universe inside our minds as well as inside our life. Using their own controlled distant folklore propagation networks, and now America's new sovereign wealth fund, apparently by TikTok, China, and compelling other oligarchs and economic oligarchs with their networks. We are being embedded, Russia, in Ukrainians, inside the occupation, inside a distant folklore universe. Distant folklore stories that purposely affect our moods, intentions, attitudes, motivation, in ways that repurpose us to serve the distorist memes, and that we become their means to transform our world. Did you see what Druidi Dog's wife, Melania, wore at the other day? So here she is. I mark all of these things. Of us who work in this area, and so we have Anonymous, this calling for the truth, and the only way I can both illustrate what is going on here and not become part of the problem is just it like this. And so they think they're going to meme this out, but the purpose for them to meme it out. So this is what I mean. Anyone who tells you they are so, you've really got to watch them particularly carefully, and whenever you feel that yourself, watch yourself particularly carefully. That's core teaching folklore. This is a meme chic costume designed by the Ukrainian fashion label Dress X. Two Ukrainian fashion designers who founded Dress X in Los Angeles. They, like the and me, with distant folklore, noted porousness between in real life. Dress X identified a market for real-world clothes that mimic and riff off a Marvel aesthetic. Now, dress clothes distant actual American memester-in-chief's first lady. Good luck to them, for they've seen what I see at Part2. We're living in a distant universe made of meme, of a distant folklore universe in which we are battered daily by a million hitherto unsayable and hitherto undoable things. We have no except master-in-chiefs to latch onto. The power to type at will belongs to all of us. The means of cultural production, exchange, and distribution, the main means through which archetyping outside our minds occurs, then you can archetype at scale. By archetyping, we model the world, our context. Our mental ideas help us. We create stereotypes, aggregate, become archetyped as this or that. Then new data is bounced off these archetypes, which in many cases are dynamic. So we form what I call data-resistant archetype. And that's precisely what Marcus is talking about. These data-resistant archetypes. By declaring our distant folklore universe, I am archetyping the current in our human civilization. reputations, models, mental architectures, characters, personalities, interpretations, algorithms, stereotyping. These are all forms. These are all dimensions of archetype term today. Anyway, enough of definitions. Defining something in itself, typing. The phone and memeing is also a form of archetyping in the sense I'm using the word. If you own the means of production, the cultural means, then you can engineer humanity's minds. The surveillance behind Druidy Dawn, as represented by the Vice President, want to re-engineer using the behaviorist practices pioneered by Skinner of herding, tuning, the added value to them, the organizers, the oligarchs who Druidy Dawn. US presidents could always archetype at scale. Now they have the capacity to re-encode our minds into their disinfolklore universe. Repeats, people believe migrants are eating your pet dog. If you own X on Facebook, then you can convince at scale that we are not living in a disinfolklore universe. We are. The signs are everywhere once you get your eye in, and that is my job, to get your eye in, so you can see what is. By understanding the disinfolklore universe, conscious mimetic warfare, counter disinfolklore. The disinfolklore universe is a place in which up is being as down. Today, our disinfolklore universe reminds me rather of Russia-occupied eastern Ukraine, where I worked as a diplomat between 2015 and 2018. It took Russian folklore 7 years to change the identities through brainwashing of the population inside Russia-occupied Ukraine using disinfolklore. 7 years. May not have that long. Americans don't have that long. The techniques are better now. Now the program, which began around the same time in America, 2015, I arrived in eastern Ukraine at Stanitsa Luhanska in February 2000. The Council of the European Union issued its first advisory on disinformation in March 2015. So after 7 years in Russia-occupied Ukraine, between 2015 and 2022, Ukrainians were not only convinced their Ukrainians across the river were bogeymen. These are terms we take from folklore. In folklore, brainwashed Ukraine, occupied Ukraine, to such an extent that they believed they must participate against their fellow Ukrainians, which many of us who follow the war and the battleground see and watch these videos of these zombies. Are Ukrainians. Minds have been repurposed by disinfolklore. That could be our destiny. Russia uses Telegram to create communities characterized by division. Immigrant, far left, that spill streets and politics to wreak havoc. Again, this flow between mimetic in virtual spaces and the actual demonstrations which the Russians, all of our cities, in all of our towns. You see, what Russia noticed was that community identity is wholly formed through storytelling. The modern nation state created after Herder's 1977 plea to unite the 10 German tribes. Where is our sheep called? to unite the 10 German tribes behind a set of stories, folklore, or more accurately in his case, folk song, typifying Germanness. The brothers Grimm, Goethe, and later Wagner. And 90 years later, the first unified German state was created. Identity is wholly of stories. And you will begin to how Russia's Dissen folklore works to undermine identity. In Ireland, literary revival 1900s or late 1800s led to our liberation from England's yoke. MAGA, likewise, community out. What I saw in Russia-occupied Ukraine is where Druidy Dawn's Dissen folklore universe is. We are no longer mere spectators looking on with light revulsion and mystification at America. Today, Druidy folklore encompasses all of us, and particularly all of the people in the Munich today. They are all universe, and only a few of them see this. We read the news or hear a speak of the latest abomination emanating from Moscow or Washington or Berlin, and our moods, our intentions, our attitudes, our motivations are affected. We're to darkness. Our prosperity depends on understanding the Dissen folklore universe. The Dissen folklore universe is not a metaphor. It's where we're living right now. It's the matrix. The matrix is a metaphor, you'll be glad to know. But as far as I can see, Dunsey Dawn, Druidy Dawn, and Dunsey Putin's vision slaves we watch in the matrix. Project 2025 is about replacing migrants with all the children we'll have when there's no legal means of birth control. Positive trolling and counter-archetyping are means of escaping our civilization's fate. And I'll come back to this in a second. Well, actually, quite a second. So this is where it all began for me, is Stendanska, where I spent 3 years of my life leading a team of diplomats, of 25 diplomats. Our job was to ensure the safe passage of 10,000 civilians going that way. This is an iron, and this was a wood bridge blown up in January, just before I arrived. This was blown up. Inside here was Russia-occupied Ukraine. This is our future. This is the other world. This is the Dissen folklore universe that was created. Time I arrived, out of a box like an IKEA toolkit, all the way from Moscow. You had dozens of television stations with the production of every scale from Soviet-era Russia to CNN. You had hundreds, if not thousands, of different media outlets. And you had constant creation of now called Dissen folklore. So this fairy tale beginnings, because from the arrived there, intuition that there was something folklore about this situation. But I didn't know what it was. I remember about folklore, the folk tale that I read as a child. The last several years has been focused on forging the tools we need to work out what is going on there. I realized that are living in what I now call a dis and folklore universe. So what is the nature of Druidy Don's power? Druidy Donald Trump is not a druid, the magico-religious caste in Celtic society. He's druid in the same way that he speaks truthiness to weave us inside his dis and folklore universe. Dunse's mana, his energy, is a village fool, an archetypal identity in German culture going back millennia. Transmission of ideas in the early German Reformation as an undergraduate. The ship of fools was a common one in 1520s Wittenberg. The ship of fools representing the papacy in today. We, including people like us, we are all part of the simple folk. And we are the simple folk wrapped up inside. Newton is like the ingenue village idiot. Folk tale. He never learns. Like millions of Ukrainians, he thinks he can murder. Like Dunse's same tactic, day after day, meat assault out, in the hope he'll get lucky. Third archetype I'm going to speak about, the comedian. The comedian Volodymyr Zelensky. What performance since the full invasion of Ukraine. Well, one aspect of genius, and he's done it today, a couple of kilometers from here at the conference. One aspect of his genius is harnessing archetypes. And it's no coincidence. And business and artist like President Zelensky has done all what he is doing, war magic. And that is the essential struggle between God, also President Zelensky. Herodotus, the ancient Greek philosopher who grew up under occupation, the Persian occupation, uses gos, to refer to nations with strange powers. So gos, this is the sound which is in magic, which is in magi, which is indeed in maga. Herodotus goes to describe nations with strange powers. That's almost the first use of the word magic in Indo-European culture. Nations with strange powers. So the idea of war in the Munich Security Conference is totally on brand. Ukraine is a nation with strange powers. No country on earth could unite the world against Russianism. Magic was first a characteristic of countries, of states, and I'm bringing back that meaning about war magic. In counter dis and folklore, we consciously disrupt archetypal. The stake in geopolitics is we are navigators of dis and folklore to capture our minds and our countries, to plant their own archetype and imprint their chosen identities populating these archetypes in our minds. We allow ourselves to be brainwashed, or, and we can all do this in our daily lives, consciously and intentionally, and I suspect most people here already do this, not quite as with the same level of intentionality as hopefully we can do in the future. We forge our own archetypes. We engage in conscious mimetic warfare according to certain rules of engagement. Counter dis and folklorists like us need to mistress, need to master. By mimetic, I use the term meme to signify any informational unit. It may be a thought in image, that sound again from goes, strange power. It's totally immanent almost in the moment of our lives these days. Images, a sound and a text. Memetic warfare is just a means of describing the state of our information space. Here I'm not using warfare as a metaphor. I am not likening the war for our attention space to a war. To me, it is the main battle space in a war whose dividing lines are, on one side, those to preserve the post-World War II legacy, the European Union, human rights protected as a matter of law, equal rights, or on the other, an anti-woke, pro-oligarch, traditionalist, conservative attempt to recreate the social 1920s and 1930s Germany. For me, it's not an axis of autocracy, an axis of misogyny, because the word equality is like garlic to the vampires. Putin, Druidy Dawn, all of those people. Kinetic battles in Kursk or they serve as fodder for the true battle, the real war which is going on for our mind, across our information space. Bloody kinetic battles are wars that humans in space in order to feed the mythos that affect our moods, intentions, attitudes, and motivations in ways that benefit distant folklorists like Druidy Dawn, Duncy Putin. Russia's goals are clear. Russia wants to destroy the European Union, our security umbrella. Russia wants to establish the primary municipal law over international law. Russia wants its own corrupted, empowered on a whim to legislate new laws into existence. And this, as we have seen over the past 3 weeks with his snow executive orders, this is Druidy Dawn's project to do, legislating through Twitter. The key battleground for Ukraine is our distant folklore universe. The key battle Russia is trying to do is to transform successfully its archetypal identity as, in our minds, losers. Ukraine's archetypal identity, many of us have seen, has been transformed since February 2022, and I don't discount this. And it changed over for how consciously working to transform archetypal identities in people's minds can. Overnight in February 2022, people, the length and breadth of Europe, never had one thought or idea of Ukraine, immediately understood where the battle lines are drawn. We can criticize how people's lives got back to normal, but as we see in polling in Germany and elsewhere, there's no doubt this was a permanent change in people's mind, despite all the Russian distant folklore. Russia wants us to see the archetypal identity of Ukraine as weaker than Russia, the damsel in distress, as a pathetic little animal worthy of being shot. That's what Russia is trying to establish in our minds. And those activated, I call the data-resistant archetypes of a Potemkin state. The Potemkin state is both and the mental state created in our minds by Russia's coercive and reflexive control campaigns that use distant folklore. This archetypes population is the mental battle that is served. It's served in our information space. Let's look at the three data resistant archetypes of the Potemkin state that is Duncy Putin's Russia today. Russia is indispensable. Russia has the right to determine its neighboring countries' destinies. Remember these three archetypal identities. Invincible. Russia is indispensable. Russia has the right to determine its neighboring countries' destinies. You will see these archetypes in zillions of memes. When the US Defense Secretary or Druidy Dawn himself says Ukraine must sacrifice Crimea, it's clear that they're animated by this troll. These three archetypal identities. Prime ministers, presidents, Russia hawks the world over are animated by these archetypes. When they say something like, of course, Ukraine will have to give up Crimea for peace, you know they're occupied by Russian archetypes. The problem is data of a Potemkin state. Disinformation debunking is very challenging due to various factors. Emotional biases, confirmation biases, motivated reasoning, difference in intellectual, emotional backgrounds, gaslighting and emotional manipulation to control people's thoughts. So what I'm offering today is a way of seeing through this, cutting through it, as Derek talked. Knowledge is for cutting. And what I'm trying to do is help us through the thick slice of distant folklore which we're being pickled in from morning to night. We consume the media, or we simply speak to friends, or we pick up vibes from the air. I forged the word distant folklore out of disinformation and folklore in February 2023. Instead of including the word folklore, I could have chosen song, folk song, propaganda, stories, or a heap of other words to describe the new phenomena which I'd identified. Folklore, however, captures best the way of seeing, and distant folklore is also a way of seeing. That which is as valid today to see described as distant folklore as folklore was in Jacob Herder's time. 3 years I'd been researching Indo-European mythology and folklore as a means of seeing how Russia, MAGA, used stories to create. I was looking for a moniker, and distant folklore arrived to me. So when I first arrived in this place, I spent 3 years of my life, as I mentioned, this intuition, there was something folklore about it. There was the mythological, so the Russian Wagner army unit called Wagner, guarding the Russia-occupied side of the bridge, which is actually, remember. But anyway, I think I may have taken this from the Ukraine side or the Russia side. It's actually from the Ukraine side. So the Wagner military were started in Luhansk in 2015. Obviously, they came out of the core, which was annihilated. But their show was Crimea and Luhansk. They're Odin worshippers, so they worship Germanic ruins, who we'll come back to in a minute. So there was something folklore about that. This was a loneliness, a pleasant spot, which is a phrase used by modern scholars to describe containing trees, shade, a grassy meadow, running bridges. This tradition goes back to Homer. Were archetypes. There was the forester, the bridge troll, the chief Russian bridge troll who guarded passage. He was on the bridge. Diplomats, damsels in distress, invaders, trolls, villains, mercenaries. These are all archetypal characters. Animals of all kinds were always being moved across the bridge. And every day I was there were 1,000 different stories, day long, different stuff happening. There was fairy tale, fairy story like switches. Russian occupiers described themselves as defenders, Ukrainians presented as usurpers, occupiers described as separatists. But as we all know now, they were Russian occupiers. Their designation in international law, Russia has been occupying by proxy. Russia occupied Ukraine since before the time I was there. So there's also this other element about it. There's death there and explosions and artillery barrages. The Styx River, in early Iranian religion, Dana controls passage across Sinvat Bridge. Saved, Dana appears as a beautiful woman. Damned, she appears as a witch. So what I was doing when I arrived was arguing as something folkloric. Something folkloric helped me make sense of it. And folklore, I hope, will help millions or billions of us make sense of the current moment. But the elements of that whole bridge situation, which struck me as blatantly folklore, was one thing. But what was truly folklore about the whole situation, I was blind to when I arrived there, because I knew nothing about the dis and folklore propagation apparatus that was going on inside the 10,000 square of Luhansk and Donetsk, which Russia was occupying in eastern Ukraine. I was collecting media stories, and Russia occupied Luhansk as part of my job for situation awareness. Stories about institutions being founded, a central bank, banks and parliament, courts, and all of this malarkey. Stories. I was on the bridge when the explosion was supposed to have occurred. What Russia was doing was archetyping a reality using references which meant little to me then. I hadn't grown up in the Soviet Union. Tropes like Polish mercenaries. Like the Brothers Grimm, I was collecting stories, and out of those stories I was trying to evolve a structure. Basically, the basic structure in folklore, as in all forms of dis and folklore, is inner-outer realm typing. So on one side of the bridge, we had the inner realm, which was Russia occupied Luhansk. And all of their stories created this inner realm, with Russia as the protectors. In fact, Russia, of course, were the causes of all the pain. And the outer realm was across the river. It was the Ukrainians. It was people like me coming to interfere with the inner realm. And in their minds was this fear that we were going to come and eat their dogs. And this is the same structure Brexiteers and MAGA dis and folklore uses to create community. It's the same structure, indeed, inside every folk tale, where there is boundary zones. And the original, the most important folk tale in Western culture is 3 billy goats gruff, 3 goats at a bridge guarded by a troll. But basically, this is the story of all migration. It is the 3 sons of the monarch, the community monarch, crossing to a new land. And this is the story in all of our pasts, out again and again. And MAGA folklore, when they're talking about migrants, and Brexit dis and folklore uses the same trolls. And there was an intelligence behind what was happening inside the minds of those consuming on in Russia-occupied Ukraine. It wasn't an accident that they started to get afraid of Ukrainians. It wasn't an accident that Ukrainians had their own identities change. And if you find this a bit far-fetched, then I think all of us who have American friends and are aware of how MAGA idiots, quite normal people, had their identities changed. The same with Brexiteers. You have your identity, your sense of identity change through what I call dis and folklore. And so inside Russia-occupied Ukraine, it was a matrix. You'd be glad to know I'm using matrix as a metaphor. Russia's archetyping system consisted of hundreds of media outlets, outlets, intermeshed with coercive force, coercive control, and institutions which did not mediate reality, they created reality. They forged stories, what I now call disinfolklore. I didn't then understand what Russia was doing. I didn't understand what their objective was. They were weaving why they were doing it. Very quickly after 4th of February, mind like a rocket, I suddenly understood what the whole purpose of the disinfolklore universe was creating. They were creating meat. They were creating out of Ukrainians people who would kill Ukrainians, who were convinced that they were no longer Ukrainians. They were creating of Ukrainian Russians. And this is the future which I think probably most of us understand awaits us if Ukraine was to fall. This idea people have that, and you hear Ukrainians talking about it as if realistically. They say, look, if you don't help us, we'll be fighting in Poland and in Germany, because the Russians are amazing at this war magic. So disinfolklore is a specific form of information. It's a medium for affecting our moods, intentions, motivations, and attitudes in ways which help the disinfolklorists. We wake up in the morning, we intend to donate money to help develop its drone-based warfare capability. But we pick up the New York Times over breakfast, and it tells us a fable whose message is Russia is invincible. Russia is in. So instead, the motivation, the attitude, the mood we had when we woke up has changed. Just this story, through this immanence, this archetyping immanence. We don't expect to get it from the New York Times, but it's as pure as if it had come from Nancy Putin's phone call that we've just spent the last hour listening to, being brainwashed. We're getting what I call hypnotic top-ups, which obviously Druidy Dawn got a hypnotic top-up the other day from Nancy Putin. Disinfolklore inhabits us like a ghost. It's a way of seeing. It is a mood. It's an empirical observation that immanent in many forms of what we already considered to be disinformation are discernible from folklore. By learning to see disinfolklore, by learning to archetype reality through the lenses of disinfolklore, we can teach ourselves how to identify negatively manipulative messaging in even the most innocuous seeming information units. Folklore is a toolkit. And that's why the book-length version of Counter Disinfolklore is subtitled Controlling War Magic, because the war magic is controlled. You can control it. This moniker is that we look at the artifacts in our information, the damsel in distress, Russia, the implacable bear. Better get it over with, Ukraine. Stereotypes are delivered through storytelling in newsy memes. Druidy Dawn or Nancy or their henchmen or henchwomen speak. When I speak archetypes, it's much deeper than mere stereotypes. I'm not saying we're reifying reality, aggregating deep Indo-European cognitive structures with particular aggregated ideas like the data-resistant archetypes of a Potemkin state. Writing, Joseph Campbell took a set of given archetypes from one Indo-European culture, ancient Greece, and reverse engineered a useful system for artists. It doesn't make much sense, though, in these days to people who outside of the Greek tradition. When I speak of disinfolklore archetypes, I'm talking about the immanences in almost every piece of information. The stock of professionals is storytelling. But the stories they tell ignore this aspect of, they speak at such a level of abstraction that their insights on or will bear or your cases are a lot less. So one of the fundamental archetypes in Germanic culture is Odin. And here we have, some of us, it was a wonderful day, one of the first Heimer strikes, successful Heimer strikes, and it was a classic, just a classic, basically, because the Russian propagandist, distant folklorist, had a and posted on Twitter or Telegram of him arriving, and Ukraine and everyone else in the world was able to discern the label on the building near Popasna, which is close to, and have our dear friend and brother went to Odin's army. So obviously white supremacists, and sadly the Defense Secretary knows exactly who Odin is, and the Wagner militants worship Odin. And if you don't get these kinds of and how they literally animate those who are fighting, then it's very difficult to counter them. So I could talk all day, but I'm not going to, and I've got the sign. So basically, to my point, which is consciously disrupting archetypal identities. Going the wrong way. Thank you for bearing with me. So, consciously disrupting archetypal identities, we can do this through images. Great. Or Steve. That's a of disrupting Druidy Dawn's manufactured archetypal identity. Put them on a commode. And manufactured archetypal identity. I created this. No, I didn't. What am I talking about? I just loved it. Love it. And of course, I'm rubbing it out because his archetypal identity was created with a few pictures. Strongman. And how do we start it? But here he is. I call him Blanky Poot on the first victory in May 2022, and he's got a blanket. And here is brilliant counter-archetyping from Zelensky, who totally gets this, where he's basically casting a spell on who we know is very superstitious. He is doomed. This is what we need on this plane of communication. I call him the comedian for obvious reasons. And Odin, of course, was the shaman trickster. In every class we have, in every business we work in. So these are very, very old, ancient Indo-European archetypes. So here I'm riffing off Kant and Was ist Aufklärung, because that is my ambition for distant folklore. So what is to be done? So MAGA is disrupting archetypal of our community, our international community, our security. We see this down the road in the conference, security conference. Archetypes change. Our own. We were fat, now we're thin. We were thin, now we're fat. Ours, now it's not. America was reliable, it's not. We felt secure, now we don't. Russia is a menace, soon it will collapse. We must face these changes and then consciously disrupt the archetypal identities, our attempt to inflict on our minds. What we're doing when we're on Twitter or working at our scale can make, we are in a quantity change quality. And this is what happens with archetypal. Few days is a significant change. Leader, left and right, has come and supported Ukraine. We hear none of the support America. At least I'm not picking that up, and I'm even picking up from the Brexiteers in England, who for me are a great litmus test, because those guys, they sold their country down the river, they fed Russian disinfolklore, and they annihilated their country's future. And over Ukraine, most of them have been really solid supporters, and you would expect, if their archetypal identity in America as the security protector was so strong, that right now we would be communicating. And I think what's happening as we speak with the people at this conference is the archetypal of Ukraine as outsider is changing between our eyes. I mean, you just need to think it through, and you see actually, who, if Russia invades, am I going to bet on America coming in, Druidy Dawn, or am I going to bet on Ukraine? And that's the bet the Baltic states made. And I mean, they'll never buy Ukraine, not in a million years. So the power to, so I'll wrap up now, basically. But what I try to do using this communication technique called positive trolling, which has six elements to it: generosity, right, tolerance, mana, energy, focus. So it's an algorithm, mental algorithm. I try to ensure I share, I contribute, conforms to this algorithm. So is it generous? Is it right? Is it ethically disciplined to say this now? Am I promoting the post-World War II legal order or the opposite? Tolerance, am I waiting? You know, I'm not responding to, and I look for the mana in means. What's its energy? Is it energy to destroy post-World War II legal settlement? Misogyny, is it control? Is it Russia is invincible? What's its energy? I'm looking for the themes. By focus, I mean what's often called mindfulness, but that has new agey connotations we don't come across. But it's about what you let into your mind, and you're mindful of, you know, at a time like today and yesterday, when all this crazy stuff is happening. Dawn, am I being mindful of reacting to it in emotional ways which are serving the purpose of folklorists? And what's the kind of insight inside of it? I suppose I'll just finish by saying that just as Russia uses this strategy of meat assaults, and the term meat assault is so horrid, I first came across it from messages from the Russians, so they use it to describe their strategy themselves, from Igor Gerkin, Strelkov, who used the term meat assaults when I came across it. And we can counter that by ourselves acting as warriors in digital and the information space, meat assaults. So yes, to counter one Elmo Musk tweet, which millions of people see because it's a platform, because he has some attachment in people's minds, we, all of us together, if we are aware of our occupation in this disinfolklore universe, and we have some tools which all of us can integrate. I took this algorithm from So several billion people, Mahayana Buddhists over the course, several hundreds of millions, let's put it that way, Mahayana Buddhists over the past few centuries have been able to live using these, this algorithm, which I've slightly adapted for our purposes. So this is something we can all of our outgoing communications against, and we can participate in thoughts. That is a metaphor in a sense. I'm not suggesting any of us participate in actual meat assaults. Using the tools at our disposal in film, in art, to our friends, and every action we take. We've got 200 followers, and not that many people say it. This is all adding positive means to counter this folklore universe which we are now enmeshed and embedded in. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was a most inspiring speech. We have still a little bit time for a swift round of questions if you want.
Totally. If anyone has anything to say, but I don't feel obliged.
Yeah, someone over there? Yes.
Now, I'm not super familiar with your work, but it looks like you've really structured up that nicely. If anyone here wants to look at ways of implementing your ideas, maybe into an actual study or into one's campaigning, what would you recommend? You know, reading more of papers or contacting you and having a chat? What would you recommend?
I write and publish once a week on .net. Several million words on it already there. So try and look and with it. And this is a tool we can use interact with other sentient beings and even with ourselves, because we troll ourselves all the time. Should I do this? Should I do that? This, that, this, that. And if we can proof actions before we intervene in the external world, according to, is it ethical? Is what I'm doing here generous? Am I just responding? I feel so angry at what Russia is doing. Am I making things better or worse by doom and glooming? And that's what I would like as many people as possible to be aware that we are inside this folklore. It's not external to us, and so often I see interventions like this one from Anonymous, and I love Anonymous. I follow them. But this, and this is a warning to me as much to anyone, you know, he look at this shit. So basically, cool dressed as dark, Garmin, whatever that means. Holy fuck, memes ahead. Now, this is the dark age. This is the end of the world. This is the end of security in Europe. This is German taxpayers having to pay to build these Patriot missile batteries. Because an Irish person, I mean, you mentioned Austria. So we have to avoid every line friends is an opportunity to help people perceive the reality of the threat which we face. And so I would obviously encourage everyone to and then implement, as Goethe says, knowing is not enough, or the 11th thesis on Feuerbach up until now is just to interpret the word. The point is to change it. And that is what I try to do. The party obviously are trying to do.
There's a second here.
I know your presentation has been going much further, like real world applications of disinfolklore. They're generated on basis of artificial intelligence systems, like a lot of imagery that comes out now from the extreme right, like a little bit reminding again of Stahl or something, where they try to project a certain style to their storytelling. And I'm very torn apart when I think about with intelligence myself, because I'm not certain and it's really helpful to create utopian spaces, because at the end of the day, machine learning system is relying on input data, which is basically a reconstruction of the reality detected before. So what's your opinion on?
Yeah, I did use an AI image the other day, having written recently that I'm afraid, I'm worried, I'm concerned that people's idea of what is real is being just by, and generally speaking, if I'm scanning my timeline, if someone has illustrated their post with an AI image, I just go through it, I scan through it, I don't want to see it, I don't want my cognition, my mind to be altered by it. So I share your apprehension about using it. And this is why this idea of archetype, the actual process which is going on is archetyping. They may not be aware of it. Brain cell to brain cell, if I can use that metaphor, and it's going in Druidy Dawn and his wife, and you know these images are they're going through our rational thought processes, and so, in terms of how we're interpreting the data, this is what I have, what I call, and I write about it a lot in what I call the incoming troll radar. And for me, a troll is any emotion, activity of body, speech, and mind. It's a missile, it's a bomb, bullet in Stanislavski, where I was, but it's also a meme. It's anything which provokes this emotional reaction. And so that's my incoming radar. And then myself try, and the mindfulness, the focus. So your incoming troll radar is alert, and you're not letting it into your inner mind. You're going through it, whether it's the image or bad thought, and you're mindful that you look at it, and you understand what they're doing, what they're saying. I'm listening to what some of the people are commenting on Vance's speech or Druidy Dawn's work, but I'm also creating archetypal identities myself. Dawn, Duncy Putin, I'm taking ownership of them. And I also have an outgoing troll radar, which is trying to proof my communications. So better not do anything, I think, than to, if people are being despairing, then I don't want to add to it, especially if I don't really think there's grounds to be despairing. But when I feel despairing, why share that with people? And so I think your radar is there, and it's preventing you from countering it. But the archetyping at scale, there's many different layers to it. The AI images of see the MAGA of Trump, and they are they're ridiculous. He's got his the washboard abs and all. Real Trump, but they don't, and then we share because this is just so ridiculous. But then we're keeping that energy going, and I'm constantly saddened to see people working in disinformation work for the troll and sharing it, keeping the energy. Not doing that. Obviously, I end up doing it some of the time. These tools to do it, and now I've established this character of the comedian. I will try in my own small way to try and influence our culture in an intentional way. But yeah, it's the challenge of our age. It's the challenge of our lives and our daily lives. But in all fairness, the Russians, as any of us who watch things, they give us great material. It's ridiculous, absolutely. So, I mean, as that meme goes from early part of the war, we're really that they're so stupid, and obviously they're very evil and malevolent. But they do give us great material, like a Putin, and I hear some of these amazing IR professors about strongman Putin. I'm just my could fall these so quickly, but all I can do is influence in a small way the conversation. So keep not doing it if that's the right thing to do, and yeah, would be my advice. But AI.
So thank you very much. It is not very often that I'm not only learning an interesting new word, but also am I able to meet a person that invented it. Thank you for a speech. It was most inspiring. And for the audience here in the location, I want to invite you to go for lunch now. We'll be having a lunch break, and the lunch will be served over there in the other part of the building. Thank you very much. See